talk about the Landsat satellite imagery in a nice way, because I'll be talking about the Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System, or EDDMapS, and decade of progress and plans for the future, basically. I'll give a quick intro of myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm the Integrated Pest Management Program Manager for the National Park Service's National Capital Region. I've been here since 1995, and I've been a pretty big leading advocate for invasive species management, education, and outreach over the past 25 years in the Mid-Atlantic region, and some aspects, some projects I do have been national in scope. A few things you might recognize are Weeds Gone Wild website, and the Mid-Atlantic Invasive Plant Council, and Plant Invaders of Mid-Atlantic Natural Areas book. And in relation to mapping of invasive species, I've worked with Chuck Bargeron at the University of Georgia, who was originally going to give a talk this morning on this EDDMapS program, but he had a family emergency, so there was a cancellation this afternoon, and we worked in his talk that I've revised and modified a bit so that I could make sure I could give the talk. And he will be available for questions for some of the stuff that I just don't know that much about that I'll bring up in the course of the talk. So the projects I've been working with him on are the Early Detection Distribution Mapping System for this Mid-Atlantic region, which is where my general focus is. And we came up with the Mid-Atlantic Early Detection Network a few years ago in 2010 and 11, and a smartphone app that I'll work you through. So I'll go ahead and get started. All right, so EDDMapS, as many of you I hope have heard of at least, is the Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System. It's the common operating platform for these various pest and invasive species distribution data sets. The Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health at the University of Georgia is responsible for developing EDDMapS, and that's where Chuck, who's the technology director, works out of. So their areas of focus are forestry, agriculture, invasive species, and technology. They were previously called Bugwood Network, that some of you may recognize, but they changed to the Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health back in early 2008. And this organization, CZA, works across agency, organization, and discipline boundaries. It provides easily accessible resources, combines science with technology, and creates freely available tools to help groups work together. And they work nationally and a bit internationally as well. So they were able to start pursuing these mapping technologies for invasive species back in the mid-2000s, and they activated their EDDMapS website in 2006, and then immediately started developing the state and regional EDDMapS desktop systems for mapping invasive species. It's a little bit more plant-oriented, but it varied, and often the invasive species phone apps have multiple organisms, animals, plants, pathogens, etc. So some of the early projects were the Invasive Plant Atlas of New England, called iPain, and the Mid-Atlantic Early Detection Mapping System that I was involved with. Oops. And then there was some really fun ones, really effective ones that came along after that were focused on, like the Florida Everglades developed one called I've Got One that mapped some of their really nasty species affecting the Everglades, like the pythons and some other species like that, to help provide something for the public that's easy to use. If they see something, they can grab their cell phone, and you just have to download the app, and you can quickly map what you've seen, take pictures of it for proof so somebody can verify it, and then you have a location and pictures, and you can quantify the species and all that. So these are some of the other ones listed here: Mid-Atlantic Early Detection Network, MAEDN, that's Southeast Early Detection Network, SEDN, so there's a little theme there, and others that have come along. There's actually quite a few now. This is some of the ones in the U.S. that are very, highly used, popular systems. We have the EDDMapS West that covers some of the Intermountain area. I forget, oh yeah, it's up here, the Colorado, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. And there's one for the Great Lakes, which became the one for the Midwest. They changed the name. And these are the other ones listed here. There's one for Texas, too. So this is a more complete list of some of the ones that are available. So I hope you'll check them out. Go to the website at the end of the talk and see which ones you might want to download and start using, because we need people to use these tools so that we get more data, more species covered out there in the wild, and not just for new emerging species, but for common species, just to get a report even for a county. And as Valerie Pasquarella was saying, she would like more quantifiable data to help with their invasive species research. So I'll walk you through how the MAEDN phone app works, and also talk about the desktop use of EDDMapS. I'm using MAEDN because that is the one I'm most familiar with, and I serve as the coordinator for it right now, along with University of Georgia and University of Maryland pathologists and entomologists who added some of the very highly invasive, worrisome insects and pathogens to the phone app. So there's a lot of use in EDDMapS or of EDDMapS over the years, and this chart shows the web use, Apple and Android use over the years, and this gives you some idea. From 2012 to 13 to 14, it's just steadily increasing, which is really great. Back comparison of 2015 and then 2016 will show you the increased usage. In 2015, there were about 41 reports a day from the web or smartphones from 12 reporters, and then most reports in a day, and that's just an average. Most reports in a day were 269 by 38 reporters, and then the total reports from 2,048 reporters in 2015 was about 14,000 and a half. So here's also a schematic of the states where reporting was done. It probably reflects when the smartphone apps for various areas were established. So you can take a look at that and see the Mid-Atlantic has some coverage, but there's a lot of coverage out west and in Florida. And so in 2016, it bumped up to 152 reports a day from web and smartphones, and the most reports in a single day was 1,400, almost 1,500 basically, which was a lot more, about 3 times more than in 2015. And the total number of reports was 55,500 in 2016. So it's been a good increase. It's really getting used. In 2016, the data shows Minnesota is just going crazy with their mapping and has a lot of reports. And then Georgia, and not so many in the others, but that's why we give these talks, to encourage people to use the system. Observations sent to EDDMapS by year is shown here, and in 2016 you can see there was an awful lot of information provided to the EDDMapS database. This is just download information from the Apple 3,000 downloads, almost 7,800 updates, and 6,300 reports. And the Android is a little less than that, 1,361 downloads, 4,500 updates, and almost 5,800 reports. So these are just statistics, sort of, I guess, to give you an idea of the usage, and rather than read them all, there was over 3 million records as of when this was done a few months back. There are 5,100 species. Most of them are plants, about 4,000. There are about 11,000 users. 1 million visitors are viewing the site and looking at the data, and almost 8 million pages. There's an app for biocontrol that has, I haven't used this much. This is something that we've been working on for a little while, and Chuck will probably be able to discuss this a lot more in the future. I'm going to let that one go because I haven't had a chance to talk with him. So these are some more stats for 2017. I'm just going to let that go by. You can take a look at it. And out in the West, there's a little bit more bulk upload data. So here's some of the information that might be useful to some of you out there, is that the use of this product by citizen scientists as well as professional users has the nice ability that EDDMapS aggregates data from other invasive species mapping projects across the U.S. and elsewhere. And if you have data in a different form, it can be uploaded. Not all the data has to be entered using the smartphone app for EDDMapS. You can have data in different forms, and it's all compatible with EDDMapS, so that's not a problem. You don't have to have ArcGIS training and skills to use this system. And if you do have that kind of data, the ARC info-based data, you can work with Chuck Bargeron at University of Georgia to get your data added to the system. So here is the data with the number of records that have been entered via the web and smartphone. And I wanted to point out the expert verifiers is an important aspect of this whole EDDMapS project, because we need volunteers to be expert verifiers to check the data when species are entered, when they're uploaded to the system. People who have volunteered to be expert verifiers for different areas get an email, and they can click on the email and go in and review the reports and verify them, or if they see that there's a problem with the identification, they can make a comment on that, and it won't get entered into the database until it's been correctly identified. Okay, so back to the Mid-Atlantic Early Detection Network. It's important to point out that in addition to this being a tool that you can use sitting at your desk using your desktop, laptop computer, it's really also important to point out that these early detection networks are based on a community of experts and partners. And I won't read you all this in here, but just it's people. It's people like you listening to this talk, and anyone who's interested in being part of the effort to map and identify invasive species, especially early detection of new and emerging species. We welcome you, and we encourage you to work with the app, see if you like it, and if you have any issues with it, contact us so we can help you out. There's funding support that's from various agencies and organizations, and that's always something that is helpful if you ever want to help out with some effort on funding support to do a special project, or just to continue the EDDMapS and maybe help with enhancements. That's always welcome. So this is just a picture when you're on the smartphone. This is what you would see if you're out in the field. You get a warning if you haven't turned on your GPS location services, so you can do that so you don't go out and map without doing that, like I did one day and ended up with my points being from a place nowhere near where I was. So to find a species, if you have something you recognize or you're pretty sure you know what you're looking at, you can go to the options here. There's by species categories. You can look at all species, or You can develop your own list of species. You can get state species lists. You can also, I'll talk about this in a minute, but you can also report negative or non-presence data, absence data, as a negative survey. You upload your queue, your data to your queue that's in your queue when you're ready, and off you go. Your information would be in the database. So here we go. If you're out in the field and you have a plant that you want to map, you look through here, or you have an animal, there's a category for wildlife. There's one for unknown. This is Sasquatch, in case you run across him out there in the field. And you just go along the list. It's alphabetized by genus, by scientific name. So you can look through, this is an all species list. Usually you want to just go to plants or grasses, you know, a type of plant, shrub, herb, or something. So you go along and you click on the species you're going to work on. And this is what you'll see on your phone. So you'll get this little sheet, sort of a form, and you would go ahead and fill in whatever information you'd like to. You don't have to do time spent, but some people might find that really useful for when they're doing surveys, or they have volunteers and they want to know how much time was spent, or you're paying a contractor. That can be very helpful to know for future estimates for projects. And what you would do is estimate the area of the infestation as best as you can. If you can be accurate, that's great, but if it's difficult to get around the whole area, you can estimate, and you can write notes to say that you estimated it because you couldn't get around the whole area, or if you just have a good idea of what an acre or a half acre or a quarter acre or some area like that is, put that down. Or if you just found one plant, or you can either do acres or square feet, and you can list the density as low, medium, or high. Then you take a picture or several pictures depending on the situation, and as you take each one, you look at it, and you're allowed to save it or cancel it and take a new picture. So that gives you an opportunity to keep or redo your photographs. And then you can report your location by point. So this is showing what that would look like. It would be a point on a map, or you can use a polygon, either a free form drawn by clicking on the option below, or a vector where you can pick a few points to get maybe a sharper, clearer delimitation of your area. And then, so here's where you take your pictures, you save them, you are done, basically. Report saved, and it goes to your queue, and then when you're ready, you can upload your queue. So you get that from the menu. And I'm sorry if I'm talking a little fast, but I want to just move through this so I don't spend too much time boring you, for those of you who do know about this. So the negative surveys option is here with the minus sign, and you would, when you click on that, you can get to an area and you can delimit it, as we talked about before, whatever way you'd like, a point, freeform, or this is a vector polygon, and you save that data too, but what species it is and that you didn't find it there. If you wanted to use the desktop version, which is excellent, it has a lot more information available. It's the same sort of idea. You can report your sightings by clicking on this and then the type of organism you're interested in. You can report based on a state, and that helps get you to your maps for your area. So I'm picking, this is all Mid-Atlantic oriented, obviously. And then the information on the desktop is a lot more detailed than what you get in the phone app, partly because if you're using a phone app, you don't want to have to fill out so much information. Although it'd be great if you wanted to, you can put in more information. So there's drop-down menus to get to your plants, your plant species. Same kind of idea, but you just have more information. There's abundance, like we were hearing about in the last presentation, that's an important thing that we need to fill out. There's the plant description, the maturity stage, if it's in flower, fruit, if it has seeds, if it's dormant or dead, or if you don't know, you can check that box. So you move along, and you would, obviously you're not out in the field, so you may have taken some pictures with your phone or camera out in the field, and maybe you would have pictures you would upload when you're at the desktop. So same kind of idea. You can pick one of these to do a point or draw a line, polygon, or do a vector. And so it's just more time is needed to spend on this because there's more questions to answer. And when you're done, you submit it, and your data, when it's uploaded into the database, you can go up to the distribution maps, and you'll be able to find your data with your name on it, and everybody else will see that you've been mapping invasive plants or whatever. And you can get all of your records as you go along. You can do a download of everything you have mapped. It'll show up under your name. All of your mapping efforts will be right there for you to view and toast to yourself for being such a good field mapper. So this is a little demonstration for wavy leaf basket grass, which is a terrible grass in our area. And I think probably many of you have heard of it, but if you haven't, you might at some point. And we've been trying to deal with it here, but it's rapidly kind of getting out of hand. And it is a perennial grass. It has very sticky seeds. It's spread by deer, by people, by dogs, by all sorts of animals that move through areas when it's in fruit, which is around August, September, October, depending on where you are. So anyway, you can go through the mapping information. You can look this up and find the data for the counties for the reports that have been put into the system. And that's what this shows. The previous one was the state. Then you can look at points, and this is a fairly up-to-date. I think it was late last year, maybe December or something. I don't see the date on here. But this shows you generally the hot spots for a particular species for the reports. The red is positive. Yellow is an area that's been treated. And if there are negative reports, like it looks like maybe there were there where there's the 9 kind of being hidden by the red, then you'll see that. This, you can zoom in to get a more detailed look at the distributional information. So that's really, really helpful. And you can keep zooming in as much as you like until it gets exhausted on the resolution available. So here's a list of reporters and the report dates and the locations for wavy leaf grass over a period of time. You can get this is just part of a list. You'll see the little bar here. If you scroll down, there's hundreds of reports of this plant. It says right here 407. So this is the sort of data that you can get on any of the plants that are in the database. And you can also get the reports of the locations, the satellite images of the data, more details of the individual reports made on each one. Then there's an option when you're at your desktop for tools and training materials, and there's a lot of very good, helpful things that are provided here that I would recommend you check out. You can do queries to download information on species for an area, or whatever you like. Basically, there's a lot of useful tools here, and there's also training if you want to know how to use different detection networks. So there's a lot of really good material here, and there's also links to control resources, the management handbooks, and things like that. All right. So there's also an option that many of us find really helpful where you can create alerts if you're interested in a particular species or various species. you can ask that you get alerts when reports are made of a species in your area. So you would go to this page and you would select the area that you're concerned with, the species you're concerned with. You can do many species or just one. And so take a look at that. And you get an email when that report comes in. So here is the place where you would access and download point data. And you can kind of see how this works. It's pretty obvious. So the thing that Chuck was going to talk about that I will not be able to talk about in extreme detail because he is the developer of it, but he has new enhancements to the smartphone apps. And I do have his slides on this, so I'll show you some, but I deleted the ones that I really couldn't explain. And it's too bad that he wasn't able to be available to do this talk, but he'll be available in the future. And I'm sure he'll be happy to go over all this and answer lots and lots of questions on it. So he calls it EDDMapS Pro. And the first step is to select an area on the web. This county, I believe, is the smallest unit that you can select. Wherever you are, that's just somewhere out west. So you download selected data through EDDMapS. You can drop points on an area for a particular species, I believe multiple species. And that's done boing, boing, boing with the little blue balloon dropping in. So this is squarrow snapweed out west. And you would have the same sort of information come up on your cell phone for the infestation information in acres or square feet, or if it's an individual, you can make a comment that it's one plant and provide whatever other details you want. Then you can take a picture. It's all set up the same way. There's just, this is not something you can do right now, so being able to drop points on a map is a nice improvement. You can revisit sites and use this form for revisiting when you've done treatments, when you're monitoring, when you're evaluating a treatment. You can sync back to servers once you're back in the office, I guess. And then this is the information, the way it will look, and there's a new system here that I'm going to have to let Chuck talk about sometime, and I'm really sorry. But as you know, he had a family emergency and really wasn't able to spend much time working with me to update me on this new system. But you can get to satellite images with your points and your polygons drawn for various species. These balloons are colored for when you have a positive, when you've treated an area, when you have a negative, lack of presence for a particular species for an area. And if you've eradicated it, you go green, which I think is great. So this is the new form for creating alerts. It's just a little bit nicer and a little bit better way of managing the alerts. And I believe this is all going to be made available soon in the next few months. I don't know the exact date, but please remember that you can contact Chuck Bargeron, and I have his information at the end of this talk, and you can find out more, and I'm sure he'll be talking about it more in the future at various conferences and things. So when I mentioned earlier about EDDMapS verifiers, these expert verifiers, this is anyone who would like to be a verifier, hopefully. We generally like people to have training in biology, botany, whatever is appropriate, and know how to correctly identify species. And if you fit that, sign up. If you don't and you sign up anyway, as long as you're doing a good job, there's a peer review going on. So if we notice that somebody's getting a lot of misidentifications, we'd contact them and suggest that maybe they hold off a little bit until they get more expertise with their identification skills. But so far we have a nice, pretty good group of expert verifiers, and it's just a matter of keeping up with the data as it comes in. So what's next? The things that are coming down the line are landscape level mapping and data initiatives. And Chuck is working with these groups here out west, the Western Governors Association and the Western Weed Coordinating Committee. But it would be nice to get some of this out in the east as well. So we just need to develop some ideas and initiatives for projects in the east and work with Chuck on those. Improve data sharing from federal agencies. Updates for this iBiocontrol app and website, and that's something that I think will be really useful as we have more and more biocontrols moving around out in the environment, and some new ones coming along as they're released. And if you can map them where they're released and then follow them over time and see how they're spreading and establishing, and compare that with the invasive plant data that they're supposed to be controlling, that's a fantastic way to evaluate how well a biocontrol is working. I think I was cut off there for a minute. He'll provide more personalized EDDMapS in this EDDMapS Pro system that's coming in the near future. He's interested in forging ahead on this early detection rapid response framework and the national management plan that are things that most of you may have heard about as part of NISAW with the National Invasive Species Council. So, and I have a picture of these plans, and we'll keep improving the reporting technology and just increase the number of people. I invite anyone listening to this to try these systems if you haven't done so yet. Get out and use them. And if you like things, that's great. If you find there are problems with them, it's important to let us know, and so we can fix things. And generally, when I say we, I'm talking about Chuck and his staff, because they're the technological people. But he's very good at responding to requests for improvements and to correct problems if there are issues that come up, that you're having a problem getting your data to upload, or if you're having issues when you're out in the field. Those are things that are important to let him know about. So the invasive species reporting projects are sometimes very exciting, like this one from down in Florida, and this is very good for capturing the public's attention. Sure captures mine. And we need to encourage the public, kids especially. I was interviewed by a kid last week from Alexandria, Virginia, and all about invasive species, and he wanted to know what I would recommend for kids. He was a 9th grader, and what I would recommend for them to do as a project. And I suggested they try to identify, get to know all the invasive species in their area, which is the city of Alexandria, Virginia, and get to recognize them. And even if they couldn't do all of them, they could try to go for maybe the top 40 or 50 and get them mapped, and share the data and have some fun with it. And maybe they'll find some new things that they couldn't find in the system. This is the Safeguarding America's Lands and Waters from Invasive Species, the National Framework for Early Detection and Rapid Response that I referred to previously. This is a report that came out last year. So the EDDMapS is trying to support this through all the mapping efforts that all of us are doing. And this is the management plan for the federal agencies that was produced by the National Invasive Species Council for the next, 4 years, from 16 through 18, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. So let's see. So if there are any questions, I'll stop now and take questions. And I'll answer as much as I can for today. And this is the information for Chuck Bargeron for all the technological stuff and all the general EDDMapS and apps projects that he has going. So talk to him about anything that I can't answer. Okay, I'll take questions, and thank you very much.
All right, we have our first question. Do the phone apps allow you to enter treatments or eradications?
Yes, you can enter that information, you can map it, and you can use the colored marks. I believe in the upcoming Pro system, Chuck is making that type of information easier to enter.
Do any verification of the data uploaded, such as the source identifier?
I'm not clear what I'm being asked. Can I get a little more?
Yeah, the question's a little oddly phrased. Do you Not quite sure of the question. Hold on just one second. For the phone apps, do participants need to have a login or can anyone use it?
Oh, anyone can use it, but you do need to set up a login. But once you've done that, it automatically opens up for you. You don't have to always enter your password. You would use your phone, and you rarely would have to re-enter your login information. I haven't had to do that for a long time.
How do you verify the data uploaded, if any?
That's how, when I talked about the expert verifiers, when the reports are put into the system, we look over the data as it comes in and look at what's reported and see if we agree with it. We say that if we're looking at it on the computer, we're just looking at photographs. We don't have a specimen, but we can indicate that on the verification report that it's credible. It's something we're looking at, and we're like 99.9% sure that that is what we are looking at, and we would verify that it's correct and that we can upload it into the system. So that's where the expert verifiers come in, and we have expert verifiers for a lot of areas. There's probably some areas where we need verifiers and don't have any yet, but that's why we need more people to offer to do that if they have some basic good identification skills.
So participants don't need to go through training before they can acquire login permission?
I don't believe so. I think anyone can use this. You just need to download the app and you do an initial sign in with your password, and off you go. And basically after that, unless you put some extra security on your phone, all I have to do when I start up my phone is I tap on the MAEDN app, in my case for the Mid-Atlantic, and I'm into the system after I turn on my location services. So I don't know if there's something I'm not understanding with the question, but I don't believe there's any sort of training. Unless somebody just doesn't understand how to do that part, then sure, somebody could explain that to them.
How do EDDMapS and these reporting apps relate to or interface with USGS non-indigenous aquatic species, or NAS, and their new reporting or mapping apps?
As far as I understand, because we have talked about this in the past, I would refer this question to Chuck Bargeron to be certain, but we have been in touch with them over the years, and the data can be exchanged between EDDMapS and USGS. It's not a problem as far as I understand. And I don't know about their new apps, but with an app, you're collecting data and it's going into a database, and as long as there's no block to sharing the information, it should be fine. But I'll defer to Chuck, because I don't know if there's some restriction with USGS not wanting their data to go into EDDMapS, or I don't know. I don't believe there is, but I'll let that person who asked that question, if you would email Chuck maybe next week and see what he has to say about that.
So I've kind of answered this one on my own, but for example, do people get training on how to identify invasives or how to take photos?
Oh, well, there is training through various resources. Depends on where you are, but groups like the Invasive Plant Council for the Mid-Atlantic, and also there's invasive plant councils in other parts of the U.S. They have conferences and workshops on identification. I think it just depends on where you are and like what state you are in, and if you need training to check what's available in your state, starting out by looking for invasive plant groups, either councils or working groups, or even extension agents. They often are very good for identifying insects, plants, and diseases, because that's their job. So there's a lot of ways to do that, and there are resources also like books and things like that that are provided. You can get to those through EDDMapS, and I would suggest going there, or Invasive Plant Atlas of the United States, which is another project that Chuck and I worked on, and that has a really full list of species where you can go to that for plants. At least you can go there and you can look up various plants and get information on them, but you sort of have to know what plant you're looking for before you get to it. So if you have an unknown plant, I would say that you can also send questions for ID help to some of the listservs. Like in our area, there's the Mid-Atlantic Invasive Plant Council, and people send things for help on ID that way. You could also use the phone app, whatever one is available and appropriate for your area, to map something using the unknown button and put it out there, and when it comes into the database, that'll show up as an unknown, and people will know that someone needs to have an ID made. When you take pictures, you want to try to get a picture of a close-up of the leaves, a close-up of the fruits, something that is a really good recognizable feature of the plant. And if you really don't know what it is, you just have to do the best you can. But feel free to take several pictures. You don't have to try to get it all in one. You can do a little bit farther back picture to show the form of the plant, if it's a shrub or a tree. But if you want an ID, usually it's best to get a close-up of the flowers. If there are fruits available, get those. Get the foliage. You want to get the picture. If it's a simple leaf, make sure that that's clearly shown in your picture versus a compound leaf. And if it's alternate or opposite. So when you take your picture, try to get the frame back at the distance that's appropriate to show that. A good question, by the way.
Okay, another question here. Is there a plan to link to iNaturalist?
I don't know. I don't know. That would have to go to Chuck, because that's a little bit different setup, and I'm not sure how the data in there would go into EDDMapS, but it's possible. I bet that was a National Park Service person asking that question. So that's a good question, because there's a lot of data in there, and it would be good to have that linked up with EDDMapS.
Just a heads up, I will be saving all of these questions so that we can forward them to Chuck as needed.
Great.
Don't have any more questions at this time, but we have a good 10 minutes left if you just want to hang out, see if any more roll in.
Sure, that's fine.
So I went ahead and responded to the one question about trainings. We actually do have a link on the EDDMapS website, eddmaps.org/tools. If anybody's interested in seeing some videos on some training, stuff like that might be useful to folks who are interested.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Well, Jill, it looks like people are starting to sign off. I don't believe we're going to get any more
Yeah.
questions. In the interest of reducing dead air.
Yes, right. That's fine. Thank you all, whoever's still on, for listening, and I hope you use one of these apps and get some invasive species mapped. Thank you.